Hello, everybody. It is February 23rd, 2021. Today's afternoon devotional and Bible study. We will be coming at you with Jesus is Calling for today and the book of First Samuel, chapter 21. Um, so, let's get things started with Jesus is Calling for today, February 23rd. Be on guard against the pit of self pity. When you are weary or unwell, this demonic trap is the greatest danger you face. Don't even go near the edge of the pit. And its edges crumble easily. And before you know it, you are on your way down. It is ever so much harder to get out of the pit than to keep a safe distance from it. That is why I tell you to be on guard. There are several ways to protect yourself from self pity. When you are occupied with praising and thanking me, it's impossible to feel sorry for yourself. Also, the closer you live to me, the more distance there is between you and the pit. Live in the light of my presence by fixing your eyes on me. Then you will be able to run with endurance the race that is set before you, without stumbling or falling. And that was inspired by two different Bible verses. Blessed are those who have learned to acclaim you, who walk in the light of your presence, O Lord. Psalm 89:15. And then, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfection of faith, who, for the joy set before him, endures the cross, despising the shame. He has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Hebrews 12:1 and 2. This devotional, I like the main message with it, but there is something about it that I'm like, red flag. Um, Being stuck in that pit of self pity, like that imagery that they used, I think is It's like a very engrossing imagery, but the way it's described to it, I think it can be really dangerous to be like, oh well, you know, if you're in a place where you're feeling self pity, um, like a way to get out of it is definitely praising. And when you're praising God and you're thanking God for what's around you, you start focusing on what's positive, and it's a great way to protect yourself from the pit and to get out of the pit. I definitely don't think it's impossible to still feel self pity while doing that and transitioning your head. And the red flag that pops up for me is if you're feeling depressed, the way that was worded, you could easily be like, well, then something's wrong with me, or it's this demonic thing, or whatever. And we're living in a time where mental health is at an all-time low, not just because of where we're talking, but sleep is bad, eating habits are bad, we're stuck inside, same scenery. There's a lot of contributing factors to that, and one of the best ways of medicating yourself and protecting yourself against it is to praise God, to focus on God, and find reasons to be thankful. Those are definitely good ways, but that whole idea of it being impossible in that demonic pit made me go like, yeah, that's a bit of a red flag, and I can see that driving people closer to it. And the Bible verses that were used did not need that kind of description for what it was talking about. But yeah, self pity can be very dangerous. Speaking of self pity, I realized yesterday, when we were breaking down the story so far, I was processing stuff at the end of the lesson that Saul died, and that's how I was processing it. But it was actually Samuel that passed away. Samuel was the prophet that God was showing. So I was like, I'm an idiot. Why did I think of things like this? I was telling something that was wrong. I messed up. So I'm sorry. I do screw up. Part of the deal with doing a live reaction is I might miss something. And yes, I do view this a lot as a conversation sometimes, most of the time. But it's kind of a one-way conversation that then afterwards I get to hear your side, or we can have a little bit of a talking back and forth. So, yeah, that's a correction based off of yesterday's reaction to the Bible verse. Because I kind of messed that up in my reaction. I always get tongue-tied between Saul and Samuel for some reason. It's just a lot of S names getting thrown around. But before we jump into today's lesson, a quick recap on what happened yesterday. Samuel died, and that was almost just a footnote. And right before that, David had a chance to kill Saul by cutting off his robe. Like he was taking a poop in a cave, could have walked up behind him with a sword, ended Saul's life, and he didn't do that. And then he was like, hey, look at me. And then Saul broke down and was like, holy cow. I realize all the wrong that I've done. Please, please forgive me. And also, like, here's this blessing because you are going to be the future king. And David's doing a bunch of stuff. And then he protected this guy's sheep and stuff. And then he was like, get away from me. I don't know you. I don't owe you anything. Get out of here. And David was like, all right, that's it. I'm going to kill this guy. And his wife but traveled, met David, and offered a peace offering. And David was like, oh, thank you. I accept. And I'm not going to kill your family this day. Because I was going to. And then her husband had a stroke, died, and then the widow was looked after by David and became his wife. And how she risked her life to protect her husband and her family was a bit of foreshadowing to what Christ would later do for us. So, and that is where our story is going to continue. In 1 Samuel chapter 26. Now, one second. We got a cat sneaking in. Don't we, Juxer? Yeah, we do. Hey. Juxer, look at the camera. All right. So, if you see my book flopping up and down, it's because he's headbutting it. All right. So, now some men from Zeph came to Saul at Gilboa. Oh, no, don't touch that. To tell him, David is hiding on the hills of Heklah, which overlooks Jessalm. So Saul took 3,000 of Israel's elite troops and went to hunt him down in the wilderness of Zeph. Saul camped along the road beside the hill of Heklah near Jessalm, where David was hiding. When David learned that Saul had come after him into the wilderness, he sent out spies to verify the report of Saul's arrival. David slipped over to Saul's camp one night to look around. Saul and Abner, son of Ner, the commander of his army, were sleeping inside a ring formed by the slumbering warriors. Who will volunteer to go in there with me? David asked Almanac and Hittite and Abishai, son of Zerah, Job's brother. I will go with you, Abishai replied. So David and Abishai went right into Saul's camp and found him asleep, with his spear stuck in the ground beside his head. Abner and the soldiers were lying asleep around him. God has surely handed your enemy over to you this time, Abishai whispered to David. Let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of the spear. I won't need to strike twice. No, David said. Don't kill him. For who can remain innocent after attacking the Lord's anointed one? Surely the Lord will strike Saul down someday, or he will die of old age, or in a battle. The Lord forbid that I should kill the one he has anointed, but take his spear and the jug of water beside his head, and then let's get out of here. So David took the spear and jug of water that were near Saul's head. Then he and Abishai got away without anyone seeing them, or even waking up, because the Lord had put Saul's men into a deep sleep. David climbed the hill opposite the camp until he was at a safe distance, then shouted down to the soldiers, to Abner, son of Ner, "Wake up, Abner!" "Who is it?" Abner demanded. "Well, Abner, you're a great man, aren't you?" David taunted. "Where in all Israel is there anyone as mighty? So, why haven't you guarded your master the king when someone came to kill him? This isn't good at all. I swear by the Lord that you and your men deserve to die, because you failed to protect your master, the Lord's anointed. Look around. Where are the king's spear and jug of water that were beside his head?" Saul recognized David's voice and called out, "Is that you, my son David?" And David replied, "Yes, my lord the king. Why are you chasing me? What have I done? What is my crime? But now, let my lord the king listen to his servant. If the Lord has stirred you up against me, then let him accept my offering. But if this is simply a human scheme, then may those involved be cursed by the Lord. For they have driven me from my home, so I can no longer live among the Lord's people. And they have said, 'Go worship pagan gods.' Must I die on foreign soil, far from the presence of the Lord? Why has the king of Israel come out to search for a single flea? Why does he hunt me down like a partridge on the mountains?" Then Saul confessed, "I have sinned. Come back home, my son, and I will no longer try to harm you. For you valued my life today, and I have been a fool and very, very wrong." "Here's your spear, O king," David replied. "Let one of your young men come over and get it. The Lord gives his own reward for doing good and for being loyal, and I refuse to kill you even when the Lord placed you in my power, for you are the Lord's anointed one. Now, may the Lord value my life, even as I have valued yours today. May he rescue me from all my troubles." And Saul said to David, "Blessings on you, my son. David, you will do many heroic deeds, and you will surely succeed." Then David went away, and Saul returned home. So there's a couple things in here that I think are kind of interesting. One second. My throat was getting kind of filled up near the end, and it was getting a little hard to read. Still feeling a little sick. Getting better. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be healthy. We have Saul, who just had this big revelation and asked for forgiveness, gave blessing to David, recognized his place. Something stirred him up, and the rage and the jealousy kind of kicked back in. And then Saul went again to try to hunt down David. And this time it was quick. They were sleeping. David saw them, snuck through the camp. I'm kind of picturing almost like that scene from Jurassic Park 2 when they're going into the camp to like rescue the dinosaurs and stuff, and then they open it up and everything goes crazy. Except, they sneak into Saul's tent, they grab the spear, and then they grab this jug of water. There's no doubt, like, hey, we could have killed you again. I don't know why you are thinking this, but it's not of God. Like, this is not going well for you. And David showed mercy a second time. And Saul has that revelation again, like, holy cow, David's the one. And I'm falling short. I'm not focusing on God. I'm focusing on human schemes. And Saul returns home. The big thing in this that I see is Saul, though he's an anointed one of God, like us, many times when we follow God, we follow Christ, we'll sin and we get confronted of it, and we make we make grand declarations of, I'm not going to sin like this again. I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to fall short again. I'm not going to fall short again. I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be. And we make these promises and declarations, and we feel this whole heart transformation, and then a bit of time goes by and our guard gets let down and we start sinning in that same way again. What's David's response? Not, hey, you gave me your blessings. You told me I was going to be king. Now you're dead. I'm not forgiving you. No. David goes, okay. All right. I'm just going to spare your life again. I'm going to teach you again. In those moments in our lives, God is still willing to forgive us. Even when we reward his kindness and his forgiveness with betrayal, he will forgive us again. The lie that enters in, that drives you down into that pit of self-pity, so often for me is that lie of, you screwed up and you're not worthy to be forgiven. Which, in and of itself, is not untrue. But it doesn't matter if I'm worthy or not. I was never worthy to begin with. Jesus came down and he died for me, even while I was a sinner. And that's what we talked about yesterday. God's willing to forgive you multiple times. David gets called the man after God's own heart, even though he screws up time and time and time again. But as we'll discover as we're reading through, when he commits these sins, he doesn't seem to sin the same way twice. He'll make this mistake and he's like, all right, cool, I'm going to correct it. And then he overcorrects in one way and then he ends up making a different mistake. Saul made the same mistake. Yes, there are consequences to the actions, but his life is spared again. David forgave him again, which is foreshadowing the amount of forgiveness that God has for you. The amount of forgiveness God has for me. We may be screw-ups. We may not feel like we're worthy of forgiveness, but God says, it's okay, I love you unconditionally, and for this I have also died to forgive you, to reconcile you to me by my choice. So when that lie enters in, don't entertain it as much as possible. Don't be sitting in that self-pity pit. But praise God for loving you despite how you might be falling short. Falling short is an opportunity for God to shine through your weakness, not to reject you because of it. Let me say that one more time. You're falling short, you're not measuring up, is an opportunity for God to shine through your weakness, not to reject you because of it. Not to reject you because of it. He loves you. He's pursuing you. Allow him into your successes and into your weaknesses. The other side of that coin is then, well, then it doesn't matter what I do. I can go on sinning forever and ever and ever, right? Like, God's always going to forgive me. So why does it matter what I do? By no means do you purposely want to go and hurt someone that you love. If you know that doing this blank is going to hurt your mom or your dad or your siblings, or for those who have kids, your kids or your pets, you don't purposely do something that's going to harm them, especially for no reason or for selfish ambition. Well, if you do, you might be a sociopath. But for the most part, that's not what people do. And there are times when we might make a decision where you're like, okay, for this selfish reason, I'm going to do this even though it's going to hurt them. And then we're like, oh, we screwed up. And then what happens afterwards is... Hi, Rachel. What happens afterwards, and hi, Langley. What happens afterwards is like regret and wanting to make things right, or that plea that Saul had to say, I'm not going to do this again. And then there's a good chance that we're going to screw up that way again. But that's not an opportunity for God to reject us, no. That's an opportunity for God to shine through our weakness. All right, let us pray. AJC, awesome Jesus Christ. I feel like some of my interpretation and my reaction as I was trying to describe things, working a couple jokes. I pray that it doesn't actually alienate anyone. Lord, you are awesome. Use this time. I pray that you use this time to comfort us, to motivate us, to challenge us, to remind us that our weaknesses aren't opportunities for you to reject us, but to be more involved in our lives, to work through our weaknesses, for us to have just that much more confidence that you are who you say you are. I pray for healing and protection. Thank you that I'm not really contagious, and I thank you that this is not COVID. And I lift up all of our nurses and doctors who have to deal with that. Everyone who works in grocery stores and on the front lines of things. And Lord, I pray for our province, our country, our world. That healing can come, that mental health practices can get developed. And Lord, you are awesome. So thank you. Thank you for loving us, and thank you for forgiving us, even when we reward you with betrayal. You're awesome, Lord. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. All right. All right. Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic day. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow with chapter 27.